As people are living longer, the divorce rate for those 50 and older is rising, and I should know. And newly single older people are finding a dating landscape vastly different from the one they knew in their 20s and 30s. Older women in particular are not necessarily looking to remarry. Many of us are looking for a companion or a friend, or even a no-strings-attached lover. But finding a mate the second time around may require us to relearn old skills, like how to flirt, oh my God, that's a big one for me, and how to present your most confident and alluring self in the dating world. The issue that we have when we're looking for love in the second stage of life is that we will have had many more years of building a wall around our heart from past relationship trauma. And so, unless we know what we're doing, our unconscious thoughts and actions may lead us in the opposite direction from where we truly want to go and attracting the partner that meets our needs. Lucky for us, over 50 singles, the Dating Doctor Kim Dunlop is here to help us navigate the mire of fears and confusion associated with finding love again in this second half of life. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ironing Out the Wrinkles. I'm your host, Ros McMaster.
And I'm your other host, Kate Shaw. Together, we're taking the age out of ageism, helping men and women embrace life after 50 with less fear. Kim Dunlop, the Dating Doctor, is not about changing you as a person. In fact, it's the opposite. Her consultations are designed to give you the chance to be totally yourself, communicate your innermost desires and longings, identify your ideal partner, then grow, learn and develop the way you date so you actually achieve your goals, whatever they may be. So, if past relationships have left you carrying a load of heavy baggage, Kim's here to help you understand why you need to get that luggage unlocked and sorted. Kim says, there's no need to change or reinvent yourself, you already exist. It's more about the tweaking.
So Kim, hello and welcome. I'm newly single for the last 6 years, so I'm really excited about this interview today.
And I'm intrigued.
And I'm really excited to be here. So thankful to have you guys share this opportunity. It's really great.
Yeah.
So Kim, what led you to become a dating doctor?
Yeah, we know there's a backstory there. Hasn't always been your 9 to 5. So what's going on?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. The Dating Doctor was developed about 4 years ago. And it was developed from me kind of sitting in the dating world by becoming single. I was married at 28, divorced at 40, and then suddenly entered the dating world, which was very, very new. And trying to navigate the complexities of the dating world now is so different to when we were dating many, many years ago. So for me, it also started as well when I was younger. My mum and dad actually broke up when I was young, when I was about 17 years of age. And I noticed my dad was kind of projecting emotional baggage. So his feelings onto me in not a great way. And so what then later developed was the Dating Doctor. And after going through my own experiences of, leaving a marriage with 2 children in tow, it's certainly something, that you need a little bit of skill at in terms of stepping out and stepping forward. And so, it was really interesting because, noticing men were not really emotionally or physically available was kind of a key thing that was jumping out.
Oh my gosh. So, that brings up the question, which I think Kate was wanting to raise later, but now that you've said it, do you actually have a lot of males that come looking for the Dating Doctor? Because men typically, as we know it, don't go looking for help. So I'd hate to think really that they don't go to a doctor for physical health issues, but they might be coming to get dating advice. Is that a fact? Are they looking for dating advice?
And ironically, Ros, it's quite interesting because I've had a lot more men clients than I have women. So
Wow.
it's really interesting, and I've noticed a little bit more resistance with the women kind of looking at coming towards this type of, consultation, which is, really looking at yourself. And so, yeah, it's been quite interesting having more male-dominated guys,
Yeah, that's
That
really
really is
amazing. It
interesting.
amazes me.
Yeah, because women, we tend to think, we're so open, we've got it all together. And, one of the things that might come up in the discussion later was I noticed men on the dating apps, one of the things they're saying is, please, no drama. Please, no drama.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and I
Oh.
think, God, is there a chance you might be causing some of that drama? But, I'm a woman and I know that women, they're bringing baggage to the table, and that's what's creating a lot of the drama too. So I can't wait for us to get into that a little bit too. So, yeah. So let's kick it off with what challenges and fears are faced by older clients regarding getting back onto the dating scene, particularly after they've come from long-term relationships, which end. Dating apps can be really challenging for many people over the age of 50 compared to traditional ways when we were a lot younger. So, but are there more issues when you're older and finding yourself single?
Great question, Roz. It is, because I think we keep on conditioning ourselves as we get older that we're creating more fears. And I think the biggest fear that really comes up with a lot of the older clients is the fear of rejection. And so we're kind of already rejecting ourselves before we even step out. And so I'm talking with clients and, sharing whether it's male or female. It's really tough to put yourself out there. And it's actually really scary, because we're physically putting ourselves out there. And what you need to create is kind of the physical photos, which then connects someone to you, plus the words. And it's actually very challenging to actually put that all together. And I know you've shared with me a little bit of your profile, Roz. It's then trying to connect with all of that to then attract in someone who has similar values, similar qualities, who is going to connect, well with you. So there is a lot of challenges, and it's scary. So yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the apps, they just give you 200 words or something to describe yourself and say, oh my God, I'm deeper than that. I'm richer than that. Like, how do I, economize with my words without leaving anything out, particularly since I'm an author too. So I want to be really flowery and expressive. And
And
it's
how do you
really
choose the
hard.
right app? I mean, to me, I'm happily with my partner now for a very long time, but if I had to go and do that, well, there's so many apps out there, it's quite overwhelming.
Yeah, and well, like I'm on Bumble at the moment, and Bumble has this philosophy of letting women lead, which I kind of don't like either. It was nice to a point, but and men are certainly appreciative that they don't have to do all the work. But when I start the conversation on Bumble, it very quickly, and it's not just me, I've Googled this experience, the conversation just dies. Women will go through someone's profile and we'll talk about what we've read on that person's profile to get a conversation started. And they happily answer all of it, but nothing else comes back. And you think, oh, you just hit this brick wall. So I think, if a conversation doesn't flow, by the third time I've initiated a conversation with that person and I'm hitting a brick wall, I just go, nah, sorry, that's what it's going to be like having dinner with you as well. So,
Oh, yeah, time's
gone,
valuable.
left.
Yeah.
And it's a great strategy, Roz. I love it because you're actually building your own strategy within the dating world. And so that's the key piece that I'm talking to people, and even in the older, like yourselves in, late 50s, early 60s, what Kate just said was trying to pick the right app. Like, what's the right app? And a lot of people are blaming the apps, saying that they're not getting the experience or they're not actually getting their outcomes. And it's a really great question, Kate, because it's really about what you feel comfortable with and what you feel connected with. And because it is, putting yourself out there, and it's so different to meeting someone in a cafe or meeting someone at a restaurant or through friends, having that safety net, with someone, knowing someone. it's a little bit scary, but there's so many different, apps that you can choose from. It's more about really knowing, going, what is it I want to get out of it? And I love that you've used that strategy, Roz, because I think that's really key, is really understanding the leading part. So Bumble is something where women who say might be in the corporate world who like to lead. And so their normal orientation or way of being has been to lead. Whereas other women might not choose that up because of that reason, because they want actually a man to lead, to step in. So it's then creating that flexibility,
Yeah, and that's the thing. And with my profile, I realized we had a conversation on the phone the other day, and just in the course of talking, you mentioned something about male energy and female energy, and I write about that in my own book as well, so I understand the concept. And I was having a shower 24 hours later, and I couldn't leave that concept of male energy out of my head. It kept popping up. And so I'm in the shower, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh my God, I've got too much male energy in my profile. And that's why I believe every time I end up going for coffee with someone, their profile will say, they're looking for intelligent conversation. It'll all sound really good, sense of humor, relaxed, blah, blah, blah. And then I meet them, and they're men who have too much female energy, who are looking for someone to lead them. Whereas I'm looking for a man's man. I want someone to sweep me off my feet. But anyone who's a man's man is looking for a lady to rescue. And I don't come across as a lady who needs rescuing.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that, Roz, because you're actually becoming aware. And that's one of the critical things with us, dating in this, complex world, is actually really getting to know yourself in that space. And maybe as an offer, look at having a chat with guys over the phone, because I reckon, Roz, you would pick up on certain cues around that masculine energy or feminine energy. Because I have more masculine energy than feminine, and I've been practicing the feminine. And so one of the tips that I, share with my clients to look at, and it's really uncomfortable, and a little bit what you shared about the Bumble, sending the messages and not getting anything back. It's us really just holding the space and actually waiting for them to actually step in, but then noticing if they're not going to step in, because that's what we're looking for, is that balance. So we're really looking for the balance of, creating that flow and matching one another, or, expanding that conversation over time. So yeah, that's the exciting part.
I like the sound of these apps because I met my husband in the 70s in a pub, and I think the app is great because you actually can share that you've got hobbies and interests, and you can get all that going and get a kind of a friendship happening before you actually meet, and a neutral place.
Yeah, although men typically, I think, don't like all the texting. They want to
don't
meet
they?
sooner rather than
Oh,
later. So
that's a
yeah,
shame.
that's one of the reasons they don't do a lot of backwards and
Oh, I
forwards.
thought they did.
They
Oh,
hate texting, don't they?
do
So
they?
And I think that's a really great point, what you're saying, Roz. And I love what Kate's saying, is there is so much opportunity here for us to actually put ourselves out there, and making sure that we're kind of talking to our friends and go, do my photos look like me? Do the words represent who I am? Because I know when I read yours, Roz, there was so much synergies and connection with you, and I haven't even met you. And so I could kind of tell the person that you were through just reading those words, but I didn't have any photos to connect it. But it's all building a story. And then I know with your audience that part of the other strategy that we were just talking about before is actually inviting and actually creating your strategy to say that I would like to meet you face to face, if that's something that your clients, or your audience would be interested in. Because some people don't like to have the endless texting. And, as we get older, we want to hear someone's voice, don't we?
We're running out of time, aren't we?
yeah, absolutely. And of course, I do like to meet sooner rather than later as well, because you get a vibe about someone pretty quickly. But I noticed too, probably because of how heavily masculine my profile is, whenever I meet someone for coffee, they just end up, they're terrible at the texting, but they end up talking about themselves the whole time. And I think, God, this person said they were looking for intelligent conversation, and I can give them plenty of that, but you don't get a word in. And friends keep saying maybe they're just nervous and intimidated by you. So I think, okay, well, I'll give them a second chance. And then they just talk about themselves again on the second date. Like, right, no, you're out, swipe
And,
left again.
and so do you expand that in the conversation, Roz, and saying, would you like to hear anything about me today? Have you ever tried
Oh,
that?
I haven't. One guy actually at a dinner, when I thought I'm going to jump in here, and we were talking about camping, and I thought, okay, I'm going to jump in and say, oh, this is what happened when we used to go camping. He actually turned his head and started focusing on the table that was next to us. And I stopped
Wow.
mid-sentence, and he didn't even notice that I'd stopped talking. So anyway, but you brushed briefly upon getting to know yourself. So a client comes in and things aren't working out, they're not attracting the partner they want. Let's have a look at the psychoanalysis part of the profiling that you
Like
do.
self-sabotaging, things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, all the fun stuff that we do to ourselves to set ourselves up to fail, where we should be setting ourselves up for success. So yeah, it's a great thing. Like I really am seeking to understand more about the individual, and everyone has such a different way of what they're wanting to tackle within the dating world. And it's generally what I notice is a lot of fear that's coming up. And it's really an ownership around your own vibe or your own energy and being in your own powers. And so I really do a lot of nurturing around the individual, with really trying to understand and, seeking to dig deep on all their past baggage. And I know Kate mentioned it a little bit earlier, around the baggage. And look, baggage, red flags, I say to clients, they don't mean anything until you actually understand it. And so it's really just trying to understand those elements. And we all have baggage, because if you look at the 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years that we've been living, we've created, or been conditioned throughout our lives. So it's kind of really just unpacking that to then really understand what that person is truly wanting to go to. And I think we sit in protection a lot. And I think the biggest part is that we sit in protection. And so we're protecting ourselves to say that we're not going to be able to find love. And I do believe that the scariest part is actually finding that. And that's when we look at sabotaging. So when you actually presented with it and you actually get really clear on what it is you want to go towards. So when I notice it with my clients, I say to them, it's actually going to get really uncomfortable, because it's the growth. And even, talking back to your point, Roz, with the guy, it's actually sitting in that soft feminine space saying, would you like, to know a little bit about me? It's kind of softening that to actually really invite that in, because part of us is actually sabotaging that, because we kind of are not actually stating our desires, which is such a sexy word,
And that's because there's a fear around that. Like I had a very toxic narcissistic marriage for 30 years, and I threw all of myself into that and then lost myself. So as much as I want to be feminine, be swept off my feet, that's a really scary place to be, because what if that makes me vulnerable again? And so you put up this, I'm very strong, and always saying, well, I want a man to walk beside me, but it's like, beside me, because I'm keeping an eye on you if you're walking beside me. So
and that's really beautiful to share what you just shared, Roz, because I think that is so relevant to every single woman, or man dating in the dating world. It's our protection. That's what we're protecting. And we're holding ourselves in place to the old version of ourselves. And so that's the part that I unpack with people. And I get so excited because I see the changes, in in people, and they start to become aware because a new perspective is being shared to them that they haven't thought about. And I get that it is scary. And so then the question I would say to you, Roz, and anyone, is what stops you from actually being vulnerable? What's the intentionality behind that? And it's really deep, because then you have to go within and you have to actually really ask, for truth and meaning within yourself, to then really look at discovering what that is. Because a part of you was hurt by a previous marriage or a previous relationship. And a lot of people have got similar experiences. But guess what? We're actually then labeling the new guy that turns up to be the same. And that's the part that I want to break for people. I want to bring it back to basics,
Yeah, well, you're looking for it then, aren't you? And anything that happens that might be completely innocent, you're already saying, you're seeing red flags. Well, you get confused about the red flags then, I think. You start
protection too, I imagine.
You don't learn to trust your own instincts and judgments anymore because they're clouded by the baggage that's weighing you down.
Oh, do you help your clients deal with the first date nerves?
Yeah, I do.
It's so scary.
And it's such a cool thing. I mean, because the nerves, I say to them, where does it show up in your body? It could be little butterflies, because it's so exciting to get dressed up, to go out on a first date, and it's very new, and you're going to meet someone that you've kind of connected with either over the phone or seen a photo. And then it's sitting with them and seeing whether or not that energy actually matches. So look, it could go one of two ways, that you could actually expand that, or it could be, oh, I'm actually just noticing that person is a little bit different to me. And one of the things, Kate, that I do a lot with is realigning and redefining those strategies, and also looking at your core values. And I don't know if either one of you, and I know you're in a relationship, Kate, but Roz, either one of you, have you looked at your values or updated your values? And I figured that you both would have done it. And
all the time.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't even look at what they value. And my three core values are relationships, communication, and image. And whilst I've got elements underneath each of those brackets, it's kind of like really understanding what people value within a relationship. What is it you're valuing? Is it time? Do you want someone to be on time? So if a date turns up late, all of a sudden you're on the back foot and you're actually really upset and going, I'm discounting this guy. Whereas I talk through with the clients and sort of say, well, okay, that's a value that you own, but is it something that they actually value? And is it something to reject them at this point in time? How about, what was the conversation like? What was your attraction like? So little bits like that, just getting to know and understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Values are really important, and that speaks to self-esteem too, actually. I remember writing that about that in my book about my relationship, because if you don't know what your values are, you can't set boundaries. And you're easily led and swayed by other people. But that sort of comes back to, knowing what your values are, and, being able to manifest what you want too. And a lot of people, I think, I've got an enormous list of what I want to manifest, but a lot of people focus on what they don't want from a relationship
100%.
Instead of what they do want,
positive,
isn't it? So yeah, your list is really important.
But don't you think they change? Your values change over your life? Mine have.
Values change.
Things that I thought were important were.
Yeah. But as far as manifesting what you want from your partner, like I've got the most enormous list, and when I read over it, I thought, oh, it sounds like I want to date myself. I just wanted,
you've got to love yourself first,
which is often a disaster too. Because you want someone who's a little bit, I might end up finding myself
quirky.
Very annoying if I was dating myself. But yeah, I noticed too on the apps. A lot of guys will say on their profile, don't want this, don't want this, don't want this. They're focusing on what they don't want instead of what they do want.
And they're not leading from a place of greatness with understanding themselves. And it comes back to that whole protection piece, Roz, again. You know, they're holding themselves in the past. They're holding themselves in a time where it wasn't working. And so there's a bit of baggage that's been attached to that. And so it's kind of really, you know, sitting with that person and going, okay, do I want to explore that a bit further? You know, but noticing, do you focus on swiping that person because they look great, you know, physically? So everyone has their own way of trying to connect with someone. And it's really just more about the feeling as well, because I know how you just shared the manifesting. It's great to kind of manifest, but it's actually clearing those old thoughts out. And so we have words that we share because you can actually say all the words in the world, but if you're not feeling it, and it's like when you go out on a date, if you are not feeling it, you're going to bring that whole energy and that whole vibe onto that date.
Oh, yep,
Body
yep.
language.
So my thinking is, so I'm saying people are saying what they don't want instead of what they do want. So even in a list that you're trying to manifest, you might be saying what you do want, but what you do want is based around, well, I want someone who's a good communicator because my last partner never talked.
Yep.
So it's still, yeah, it's still not what do I really want within my, what do I want to attract into my life? It's still
100%.
you what you want to manifest is still based on what you don't want instead of what's really important to you.
And I think that the lists are great. And I actually totally agree with you, because the lists are great because it actually gets you to get out of your head, actually write it down and actually put it on paper. And what I get clients to do as well is to actually read it out, to see if they resonate with it, to see if they truly, if it's really, truly important, you know, and something that they do believe in. But, or if there's something within that that they're not really believing, because we hold these belief systems in place, which is really stopping us from actually getting the partner that we want, because it
Yeah.
goes back to the protection and goes back to the old ways. And so it's kind of tweaking that, as I had, you know, which Kate shared kindly at the beginning. It's tweaking that, it's redefining it, and it's actually slowly or fastly, depending on the person, getting out into the market or getting market ready. And so there's really key things, you know, and it all comes back to us. How are we presenting ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
How are we turning up?
I love what you said about communication, because they're not mind readers. And I mean, I often expect my partner to be my mind reader sometimes because I'm not clear about things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
learning how to communicate is key. But as far as having things in common too, earlier I was talking about the fact that I resonate well with the energy of Leos and Geminis and what have you. I really love that 5 love languages as well. And I know from a very brief partnership that I had a couple of years ago that our love languages were so different. And so his needs weren't being met and neither were mine. And it drove both of us insane. So love languages, they're important. And should we be putting our love language on our profile?
I've never
Because
heard of them.
I actually know when I read someone's profile, I think mine is, I think I told you what it was and I can't even remember. It's acts of service and something else. So if I read, someone says, and this must be 90% of men, say they're tactile, they're very tactile and overly romantic, except they don't say overly, but that's how I interpret it. As soon as I see the word tactile, I think, no, I don't want your hands all over me 24 hours a day, swipe left. So
And it's a really great point, Roz, because we're making so much meaning out of words. However, what we're missing is the opportunity. So that guy who might be tactile, he might actually be a gentleman. So what if that overlaid as being a gentleman? And so tactile for me has a different meaning, that he's, you know, very tactile in the way that he approaches things. So do you notice the different perspectives and how they can be shared? But it's really us stepping into and actually exploring and expanding that. And, you know, I say to people, you could be missing out on opportunities because we're holding ourselves in a label of a particular name. And so, yeah, it's just an offering to kind of share with, all your viewers as well,
Oh,
that
yeah,
we can
that's where the
kind of
words are so
repivot.
tough.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
words are tough. But going back to the love language as well, um, my partner and I've only been in a relationship now for the last year and a half after being single for 8 years. And his love language is different to mine. However, it's really understanding that in a relationship. And if you've got two people that are willing to work at it, but what I find is that we've been lacking, and the women, we've become so strong, and we've kind of forgotten about our feelings and our desires and our needs. And I also believe that with the men as well, because the men have become the labels of who they are in the workforce, and culturally, have had to be the strong ones. And if we look at that, guys, holistically, and we go, what if we were to share exactly what we need? And if everyone was to share what they actually needed and go, would you be open to actually commenting on my outfit when I dress up? Because that's my language of love. And so it's inviting your partner to actually say, would you be open to doing that? I've got an important meeting. Would you be open to actually wishing me good luck? I don't have important meetings all the time, but when I share with you that I've got an important meeting, would you be open to, wishing me good luck? So it's those beautiful feminine qualities that we can bring into our relationships in a beautiful and tactile way. And do you notice how I use that word in such a different way now?
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's true.
And so, can I ask you, do you find older singles' fears different to younger singles, or are they the same?
And look, it's a tough question, Kate. I would say it's very similar.
Okay.
And it's the fear, the biggest fear that a lot of people hold in place is the fear of rejection
Mm.
and the fear of not being loved. And the biggest part in this process, which makes it really challenging, and as I say, scary as well, is actually starting to love ourselves.
Yeah,
And
that's number one, isn't it?
yeah, and it's a tough one, because where we place our attention, like, are we placing our attention on, other people, or are we focusing on ourselves and our needs? And I say that, in a really passionate way, because our needs are not being met. And people are reacting and they're saying, oh, I need this or I want that. They're not actually sharing it in a loving way, which kind of presupposes that they're not loving themselves or giving themselves enough self-care. And so I see that a lot, with people within the dating world, because they're frustrated and they're wanting to find someone. And I believe that we're all looking to love and to be loved. And I honestly believe that as human beings, that that is fundamentally what we've been put on this earth. And if you think when we were babies, who was loving us? Our mums. But yet, some people didn't have that. So they missed that. And so that's developed within them over time, and they might have been abandoned. So therefore they've got protection that comes up in relationships. So, it goes back to Roz's point, really getting vulnerable and having these beautiful, authentic conversations, and being really real. Because if we're not bringing that to the table and we're not sharing who we are, guess what? You're not going to find the person, because the person who will, connect with you will love what you're sharing.
Yeah, that's very true. So if I drop this heavy masculine energy, how do I flirt? How do I start flirting? I started trying to design another profile for myself, and I think I was going to word it something like, I've forgotten how to flirt, but if you sweep me off my feet, I'm sure I can batter my eyelids and my cheeks will blush or something. It was like, so how do you flirt when you're typically heavy in the masculine energy?
Yeah. I think it's getting back to our innocence, Roz, and getting back to our inner child. And I know you probably will relate to that in a little way, but getting really playful. I think we've become so serious, right? And I think we've become so serious that we forget to actually have fun and really enjoy. And one thing that I used to practice, and I know, is really changing my voice and really softening it. to allow a masculine man to step in, and tilting my head. I mean, little things like that, can go such a long way, but it's really sitting in that and feeling into it as well, which makes it really exciting, because I feel like it comes up for people when you're actually in the physical form, when you're meeting someone, because there's that nervousness. And then when there's that little bit of attraction as well, and everyone's attracted to someone different, we all don't have the same type. So there's plenty of options out there. So it's just really being playful and touch as well, or it could be winking. All of the
Winking, oh no,
not
that would
away.
be swarming for me. It's like,
Me too.
and the touching, it's like,
Oh no.
yeah.
I like
So what's
touching,
that,
but measured
so what's all
amounts.
that about, ladies?
Well, I just like measured touching.
Yeah,
I
I
know,
had
Right to
this.
the top. Yeah.
I had this one guy. It was a really fun conversation. Actually, we were enjoying having a chat with each other. But he kept grabbing my hand and saying, "Oh, you smell so." I had perfume on. You smell so great. You smell so great. And I just found that really invasive. He just kept grabbing me. I thought, no.
Yeah.
But which is a bit different to just a hand on the arm
See, I love
gently.
that.
When like,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah,
What would you
that's
like?
nice.
Yeah. So
And,
Yeah.
I do agree with that. I really like the softness and what you just did with Kate and sharing that touch. And do you know what we need to do, Roz? Is we need to kind of educate the men a little bit and guide them. This is what, is really important, is guiding them, because we see that they've got a little bit of potential. And it's not about saving them, but it's actually saying, oh, look, it's really sweet that you're touching my hand. But I'm wanting to, either create it's trying to create a boundary for yourself, but it's actually saying, oh, would you mind, I'm just getting to know you. I'm just sharing with you that I'm getting to know you, which comes back to kind of sharing who you are. Because if you feel a bit uncomfortable about that, then he hears that. And he then can either acknowledge it or choose to then ignore it. And so you've got then that opportunity to actually then have another person to date. There's all these wonderful opportunities out there.
right from the get-go, yeah. And see,
Yeah.
I would have thought I don't get the butterflies when I meet someone for coffee. I'm too confident. I need to like let go of some of that confidence, I think. But yeah, I
Just be
forgot what was-
you. Just be
yeah,
yourself.
just be me. Just be
Yes.
me. But after that particular date, I was parked in the wrong spot and I got a $90 parking fine. So
Oh,
I thought,
no.
if that's not the universe giving me a red flag about that guy, like,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's funny. I hear a lot of women talk and badmouth men, and I go, I love men. And
Yeah, I love men.
Yeah.
They're beautiful
and
creatures.
it's really, yeah, they are beautiful. And it's like, I think when we start to express that and actually really appreciate it, and whilst certain people are not our type, and I had a client who was kind of, how should I say, critiquing, other people in the dating world, and I said, okay, what I'm noticing is that, they're not really matching your potential values. She's very successful, had her own business. And I said, you're really clear on what you're looking for, but what advice would you give this guy? And so she turned around and she said, I would tell him to hold his shoulders back. I would tell him to change his wardrobe slightly. So it was kind of doing the tweaking, right? So I actually flipped it on her, and it was beautiful, because it's then giving ourselves feedback as well. What is it that we'd like to update? What would we like to change? And Roz, you already mentioned it earlier about changing, a little bit in the sense of tweaking or updating that, not bringing that full masculine energy, creating a balance to then open up the vulnerability. And so there's all these beautiful things.
Because I've known
Yeah.
Roz for years and years. There's no way I'd ever think of you as masculine. I think of you as confident, but definitely not masculine in any way.
Oh no,
No.
my profile comes across quite masculine, doesn't it? And that's why I'm attracting
see.
people on the app who
Okay.
are looking for someone to be strong, because they might be more not weak, but they're strong in the feminine, maybe. Yeah.
I don't
So,
know.
well, that's how I'm perceiving it anyway.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
the key to success is having a man who's able to flow into masculine and feminine. That's the key.
Yes. Oh,
That's a
balance.
bonus.
And that's what I'm looking for. Someone who's really balanced so that I don't completely have to give up that strong part of myself, because I actually love that part of myself as well. And that's something I was missing very much in my life. And I've had to develop that too, because I had cancer 3 times. So I had to step into, being quite strong for myself and finding the balance of nurturing myself as well. So
And everybody else that's been going on in the past.
Yeah,
You've been nurturing
yeah.
everybody. Yes, so that's, you had to be strong.
But yeah, that's and it is, I think, all about creating balance, isn't it? Because if you keep attracting men who don't communicate well, you kind of have to also look at yourself and say, well, is there something I'm holding back as well? Am I not as good a communicator as what I think I am? Because that guy that I was mentioning that I briefly dated, I was doing this whole thing. He was my first person that I was dating after my failed marriage. And I kept saying to him, all right, we should check in, how's things going? You're happy with everything? And he was saying, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. How about you? And I said, oh, yeah, yeah. But neither of us were satisfied with the relationship. And so I wasn't being honest and he wasn't being honest. So whatever you're putting out is really what you're getting back.
Because you're talking about feminine and the different kinds. Well, how do you know what your brand is?
Oh, okay. So that's your brand.
Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, it is. And a little bit like it's probably tying into what Ros just shared as well, is she's not wanting to let go of her confidence. She's wanting a man to actually understand that and appreciate that. In terms of, what I experienced and what I realized is sometimes having that confidence, we need to kind of adapt to then allow others to bring out their confidence. So it's that adaptation, that we can bring forward. And so, developing your personal brand, it's really like what you are turning up as, there's so many key elements with how you're turning up, and if you understand more about yourself, then you understand more about who you're attracting in. And I think a lot of people are mirroring. So there's parts of you, Ros, and a lot of people are mirroring what they're attracting in. And so we have to take responsibility at some point and go, okay, so what is it that I'm actually showing? And I picked up on something that you just said and, saying, oh, we should check in. So it's something that's really important for you to actually check in for a relationship, but yet it's not necessarily important for your partner, maybe. But there's a level of, masculine energy also coming through saying we should,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a demand, but it's more like, what is it that we would like to see coming in? So it's really just shifting that personal brand and actually going, okay, my personal brand has been this, confident person who's got clarity around who she is. And it's really then taking ownership of it, of your personal brand and really understanding it. But what I balanced out, Kate, was bringing in the feminine qualities and actually really sitting in feminine for probably a couple of years and not actually sitting in masculine at all. So I really tried it on by just sitting back and just allowing things to come to me. But then I realized it's just creating that balance of, putting forward your desires, what I would need or what I would like. But the personal brand is very personal. It's personal to the individual. It can come back to physicality. It could come back to communication and the way that they're speaking. It could come back to even just the baggage that we're holding on to. And I can hear it in people's voices. So even as a personal brand, when you're delivering your message, if you're holding a vibration of anger, frustration, it comes through. It comes through and people notice it, If you're coming through with someone who's happy, joyful, and very playful, but it's then owning that in an authentic way.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Interesting and scary and
Oh, very scary.
But I
So
think this
scary.
is
It's good that I think you're very authentic. I think it takes a lot of courage to be authentic, doesn't it?
yeah.
It does. It takes a lot of courage. And I think, you know, supporting, and you said before, Ros, nurturing. We've forgotten how to nurture ourselves. We were gifted a belief system many, many years ago. I know I was, and I'm generalizing here with everyone, but I'm sure you will relate to it, is when something goes wrong in your life, you just need to pick yourself up and keep going. And a lot of people have been gifted that because we've now, you know, living in a very complex world. We've had the world turned upside down over the last 3 years. And people have been operating from the external in, not from the internal out. And so what I'm looking at changing with people or supporting people is actually really nurturing those needs, really looking at going, okay, what is it I need? Because if you're a giver and someone who's been giving, the pendulum's kind of a bit imbalanced. And so if you constantly keep on giving, the polarity there is that you actually want to receive, because then if you keep on giving, you get exhausted because you keep on stepping in and giving to others, yet you're not open to receiving, which is part of protection as well. And so then it's kind of playing that card or playing that role. And we've all played a role in different relationships. I don't know about you, Kate. Do you know what role?
Yeah.
Do you know what role you've played in your relationship?
Yeah, I'm a real giver. I'm the oldest of a huge family, and I'm used to. I had a mother who was very ill, so I've got a bad habit of trying to mother everybody. I'm very aware of it. It took a while to realize it, but
Yeah. So, I mean, the dating doctor really, I mean, for long-term marriages, often they need to rekindle stuff again. So they need to start treating each other like they've met for the first time, and go out and
we
put
have
some
a
of
date
the
once a
put some of
week.
the tips,
Yeah,
you know, how
yeah.
to communicate better. You lose sight of each other, I think, when
Yeah,
you've been married for a
take for
long time.
granted. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's really important to keep on, you know, working together
Yeah,
and
we
really
have a date
understanding. Yeah.
always, once a
Yeah,
week. Yeah.
keep it fresh. But let's have a look at some of the things. What are you finding? What are you advising, if you do advise people on what real red flags? There must be some common red flags to look out for.
Look, one of the key things I do want to highlight with dating is, which I think is really important, is make sure when you're going out on dates, is look at it from a safety point of view. Always meet in a, you know, in a place where you feel safe, you know, whether it's at a restaurant or a cafe. You know, I think that's really important. I think a lot of people might be a little bit too open and going to different places and not really knowing where they're going. So that's just one of the key things that I do want to highlight. But in terms of red flags for dating, look, it's an interesting question. Yeah, because I don't hold energy on it. And when I say it, it's more like it comes back to your values. I mean, I think I was telling you the other day, Roz, about a date that I went on, and I was wearing high heels. I didn't go into detail, but I was wearing a white dress, high heels, earrings, and makeup on. And the date actually turned up in thongs. And so for me, I hadn't done the qualification checks. So I hadn't done all the checks. And so what I had done was I had swiped right, and he only had limited photos. So what it gave me was really good feedback. And so what I really want to get across is it's really important to actually take that feedback on and going, okay, you know, I noticed that this guy was wearing thongs. He wanted to go out on another date with me. We went to a fancy bar, and I thought, that's not matching my image. And look, I'm not saying that image is important. I'm actually saying it's important to me. So I'm grounding it by saying it's important to me, and it's not necessarily important to everyone else. But I remember saying to a friend who wore thongs out for dinner one time, we went to this nice restaurant, and I said to them, well, are you comfortable with actually meeting someone else who wears thongs, or are you looking for someone else that is all dressed up? Because they may not like that quality. And so it's really just understanding and playing with that. And because I know a few people have said to me, oh, you know, Kim, it's not about the looks, and we live in a society where everyone's all about image. I'm not suggesting that by any means. It's more about what you feel comfortable in. If you feel comfortable in tracksuit and that's bringing your A game to a date, great, you know, because then you will attract and mirror someone else who's also in tracksuits, you know. So it's really just finding that ideal partner. But
That's the thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Your values, your mirrors. Yeah. What are you
Communication.
putting out there? Yeah, values and mirrors.
No, do you have any special challenges that you address for widowers and widows who, their partners died and
Yeah, it's a great question, Kate. I mean, I've dealt with a couple of people who have actually been in that situation, and it's a really delicate situation because there's a lot of emotions at play. And probably the biggest piece I would say is really preparing yourself and going through those emotions and starting to look at those emotions. I suggested to a client to actually look at writing a letter, and that was probably too much. He turned around and he said to me it was too much for him to write the letter because it was too fresh. But it's actually talking through the experiences with other people, but also knowing and keeping at the back of your mind that that person deserves to find love again. And they actually left on really good terms, most of the people who I've come across in that instance. And so the challenge is really around the emotions and really sharing and bringing that forward. And it's a tough thing and it does take time. It really is tough. But that's probably the critical thing, that I would share.
Yeah,
thank you.
definitely.
Yeah.
I feel, just going back to when we were talking before about, men being criticized and sort of bashed verbally, I feel a little bit sorry for men too, since the women's movement and, women
Me
coming out
too.
and sort of being a bit stronger, men have kind of lost their place in the world a little bit.
100%.
Yeah, and just, we need to understand that they're not mind readers any more than what they ever were, and they have a different way of communicating, just like they've always done. So, women have found the freedom to be more of themselves now and take charge of their lives and the role they play in the world. But men have remained men and don't know what to do with that.
Like some women
Yeah.
might be offended by a compliment. Like, I love a compliment, but
Yeah.
it's a minefield. How do they know how to navigate the new world?
Yeah, they don't. It's just, they really lost their way. They don't know what to do. And I think at their core, they want to please, don't they? They want to
100%.
make women happy.
And look, men are really building their confidence, Ros, and I think you've touched on a really good point. They have lost their way, and I fully agree with you 100%. They have lost their way, and women have taken up a different position, which is then holding a bit of that masculine energy. And so it's also us having to have asserted ourselves in a male-dominated areas, things like that in different industries. But yeah, I feel like that they are lost and they don't know how to approach things. So it is really guiding. And I was reading a book the other day, which was the masculinity of the patriarchal ways, which is a cultural thing. And so fascinating, to actually read some aspects of this book. And it was, really that dominance, that control. And I think sometimes now men kind of don't know what to say or how to do things. Oh, can I touch you? Do you mind if I open up the door? Or, little things like that. They've lost their confidence. And so it's also building that. And that's one thing I'm working on with the men as well, is really building their confidence. And even some men, I've had some clients where their lack of confidence, say even in a handshake, or knowing how to approach a woman. So when you go on a date, like, do you give them a kiss? And so it's really going back to that personal brand that you talked about, Kate, is what is your personal brand? How do you want to turn up? What is that? What would you like? What are your values? I'd like to kiss a woman on the cheek to say hello and just put, touch on the elbows, as I lean in, but not obviously overdoing it. So it's really just guiding and educating them, in a way. But seeing the potential, I think that's really the beauty in, if you see potential in a man, it's then kind of offering that beautiful feminine quality that you can bring forward and say, I really like you. I like, really like the qualities of you. This part, it's just for me, which is my needs. Would you be open to it? It's really expanding that and really exploring that. you know,
Especially if you're European, you know, I love the way they greet. Well, it took me aback at first, but they, instead of shaking hands, you get the two kisses on the
yeah, it's
cheek, men
beautiful.
and women. Yeah.
So you mentioned the word potential. Is that part of the three P's that we've read about?
Well, it's got a lot of potential in it. But the word potential doesn't come in. It's preparation, presentation, and position.
Uh,
Um, but
maybe four P's now.
exactly, I think we might bring that in.
You good one.
Which creates the potential. So it creates the further potential. So yeah, when you're looking at preparing to get into this scary dating world, what are you looking at? Are you talking to your friends about it? Are you checking in with your, the apps and actually really connecting with your photos, your words? I mean, look, we interacted the other day, Roz, and it's kind of like there's the opportunity, and I would love you to update your profile after this session. And I'd love to read it if you send it through to me, and then I'll see, really if it's really what I can see within you, or if I feel that there's other beautiful words that are attached to you. Because, like what Kate said, a lot of us are pushing away the compliments, which is which is the receiving of love and the receiving, and we're all putting that away, and we're going, oh, they might say, oh, this is a beautiful dress. Oh no, I don't look that great today. It's little things like that we're putting ourselves down, and we're not stopping to actually say, thank you, I'm actually receiving that. Which is bringing in that nurturing and that love to then be open to receiving it from a beautiful man that walks
Because it's
into
a
your heart.
gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And, we're denying people of giving us a compliment when we're actually giving it to others. So,
Yes, yeah. Oh, I don't mind. I don't mind getting compliments. Compliments is fine. It's just, if they're overdone,
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think,
Like touching too much.
yeah, no,
Overdone is one thing for you, and overdone is different
Yeah.
for someone else. So,
Yeah.
yes, we get back to communicating, I guess.
I know. But whatever state you're in, and like whatever position, has unfolded for you, I would say to people, how are you preparing to get into the dating world? Do you want to take it slowly? Do you want to go fast? Are you bringing old baggage into the conversations when you go on first dates, or are you clearing that for yourself by chatting to your friends? And I always say to people, have a chat to your friends before you bring that to a date, because it's exciting to actually meet someone new. But if we're not clearing those emotions, the preparation, that we're doing might be setting us up to fail. And then it's the presentation then, how are we presenting ourselves? What's really important for us to share? Is the other person listening to us? Are they holding the space? What type of questions do we, want to bring in the presentation? And then position is the third part, which talks to, I think you touched on it, Roz, right at the beginning, is do you want to, be in a relationship, or do you want to get married again? I mean, there's still time. And I know people who are older who have got remarried again, and I even was chatting to this guy who I didn't realize was 90 years old. And I said to him, there's still opportunity, to fall in love again. And it was beautiful. But it's just really knowing, are you wanting to have fun and be on the fun choo-choo train, or do you want to be in a relationship? So it's getting really clear and understanding that. So,
Yeah, that's fabulous. So a lot of the three P's encompasses what we've been talking about: knowing your values, and showing up for, looking the way you want other people to show up as well. Yeah, presenting how you want other people to present. This has been so fascinating. I'm definitely going to take you up on your offer and send you my next profile. I'll be spending the next month working on it.
And I'm going to investigate that's 5 languages of love, which I've never heard of. So
yeah, it's really good. It's really good. And I've got a different language of love, which I've added to it.
Oh, what?
What's
Share?
that?
Well, mine is a man who actually shares about his life. So that's my language of a love, is a man who's actually creating and developing his life, whatever it is, but sharing with me what it is he wants to see as part of his vision, what he's working on, and that. So yeah, it's a big love language for me.
Oh, that's
It's
wonderful.
hard to get men to talk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Though yeah.
But that's a wonderful place for us to start. Before you give our listeners some words of wisdom about dating later in life. Oh, and I will just go back to I've got a 23-year-old and a 25-year-old, a son and a daughter, and because they're on the dating scene and they're in the apps. And when I complain about what's going on in my app world, they say it's no different for us, Mum. We hear you as exactly the same, exactly the same. So
Yeah.
anyway, so what services are you actually offering?
So at the moment, it's really individual, and I'm finding that different clients are wanting different things. I know you guys are based up in Queensland and I'm based down in Sydney. So I do either Zooms with people.
Do you do it for overseas people too? Because this goes
Yeah.
internationally. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
definitely. So I've done a few overseas people, and it's great because I can connect and actually read and understand people through looking at their body language, listening to their language, and also I can profile people's faces. So through understanding how they would like to integrate information. And so it's a really beautiful and powerful thing. So I really pride myself in getting to know someone on a deeper level. So yeah, it's definitely, so Zooms face to face. I do picnics, coffees. I take people out to bars to and so actually sit there and actually look at supporting them in actually approaching people as well. So it's quite diverse in that sense.
Wow. So can I just clarify? So you'll go to a bar with a client and help them to approach someone at the bar?
100%, yeah.
Oh, that's
100%.
fabulous.
It's like
That's
best
so
friend. It's
good.
lovely.
What a
Yeah.
great service. How exciting.
And look, the conversation that I have with my client is all around working with them. And so they have such an interesting conversation with me whilst working on themselves, and also then able to then step forward and actually look at, creating conversations. So we create group conversations or one-on-ones where they go and approach. So it's a little bit of a challenge.
Well, it's getting used to rejection then as well, isn't it? Like being okay with rejection.
Yeah. And then talking that through with, someone who's there to support you and guide you.
Well,
So
that's
yeah,
special.
brilliant. I love it.
That's
Great.
amazing.
Yeah.
I
That's
absolutely
really
love
good.
it. It's really great.
That's really great.
And at least the client is also able to have, like, I make sure I just keep it minimal where you can have a couple of drinks, so you're not kind of, it's not like a long night, but you're there for a specific time. And so it's very specific. But yeah, they get so much out of it. And it's through interacting. And so you can see how they interact. And even another one, I've done cooking. So I've done with some clients cooking. So I take them to cooking classes, which is another language of love to a certain degree, because I don't know about you girls, but I know with my partner, I like to feed them and make sure that I'm cooking. So that was my language of love in giving. So
yes, acts of service.
Yep.
That's fabulous. I love it. I'm so excited about this. I'm definitely going to become a client. I hope I won't need to after my next profile update.
You've got a psychology degree anyway. That should help you.
Nah, well, you're too close to it yourself. Like I've got all the answers, but
Yeah, I see.
it's not until you actually go and put yourself out there that you know if you're just talking or you're walking the talk. So.
And having someone who's objective as well. So a lot of my clients, can see that I'm not holding judgment, because I'm actually sitting there and perceiving them and going, okay, what is the choice that you'd like to make here? We do have choices, and which path do you want to take? Is that going to be a bit too much to stretch you? Okay, we'll take it back, so it's little steps, but bringing it back to basics, to then explore that beautiful relationship.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we're going to have links to your website. There's and you will also find the Dating Doctor on lots of podcasts and YouTube videos. So you're not hard to find, and lots of advice. All your podcasts and YouTube videos are so informative. But that one-on-one personal attention and really looking at what the person is doing to sabotage themselves, that's vital, I think.
Fascinating and interesting.
Yeah. So to take us out, Kim, what's your wonderful words of advice or wisdom for the over 50s who are looking for love in all the wrong places?
Yeah, I would say to the audience is really just put yourself out there, because if you don't take a chance in meeting someone new, you might still be in the same position. And so it's actually really putting our hearts out there and actually sharing who we are. And the opportunity is that you might find love if you're open to it.